Don't. Just don't." He didn't listen, and the town was furious. It was a cold winter evening when she found herself standing in front of his door, unsure of what to do. The wind howled, and the snow seemed to be falling endlessly, covering the world outside in a thick blanket of white. She had nowhere else to go, and she knew she couldn't survive out there much longer. The warmth of the light spilling from the cabin window felt like a beacon, promising safety, even if it was from a stranger. Hesitant but desperate, she raised her hand and knocked. Inside, he was sitting by the fire, trying to keep his mind off the loneliness that had been haunting him since his parents passed away. The cabin was small, just enough for one person, but it was his home. Wraith. He had always been content in his solitude, finding comfort in the simplicity of his daily routine. But tonight, everything felt different. There was a knock at the door, and without thinking, he stood up and walked over to answer it. What he saw made him pause. A woman stood there, shivering, her clothes soaked from the snow. Her face was pale, her eyes tired but filled with gratitude. She looked as though she had been walking for hours, perhaps longer. It was clear that she needed help, and without a second thought he stepped aside and invited her in. "Thank you," she whispered as she stepped inside, the warmth of the cabin enveloping her immediately. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the heat sink into her bones, feeling a small sense of relief. He didn't ask for her story right away. He didn't need to know all the details. All he knew was that she was cold, lost, and in need of shelter, and that was enough for him. "Come, sit by the fire." "I'll get you something warm," he said, motioning for her to sit on the couch. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded and sat down, removing her wet shoes and socks. He went into the kitchen to make some hot tea, trying to shake the feeling that something important had just entered his life. The woman was a stranger, yet she felt so familiar in some strange way. When he returned, he handed her a cup of tea, and they both sat in silence for a while. The only sound was the crackling of the fire. "I'm sorry to trouble you," she said softly after a long pause. "I didn't know where else to go," he smiled gently. "You're not troubling me. I'm just glad I could help." They spent the rest of the evening talking, getting to know each other in small ways. She told him that she had been traveling looking for work and had ended up stuck in the storm. He didn't ask too many questions, not wanting to pry into her past. He was just grateful for the company. They shared stories about their lives, and as the night went on, the awkwardness faded away. She was kind, and he found himself enjoying the conversation. When the time came to go to bed, she hesitated. "I don't want to impose," she said, looking at the small guest room he had set up for her. "But I don't have anywhere else to sleep?" He shook his head. "It's no trouble at all. You're welcome to stay as long as you need." His voice was reassuring, and she gave him a small, grateful smile. She didn't know why, but she felt safe in his home. She had no intentions of staying long, just until the storm passed, but for now, it felt like the right place to be. The next morning she woke to the smell of breakfast cooking. She had slept soundly, the warmth of the cabin and the kindness of her host, making her feel at ease for the first time in a long while. When she entered the kitchen, he greeted her with a warm smile and a plate of food. "Morning." "I hope you slept well," he said, setting the plate down in front of her. "I did, thank you," she replied, her voice still soft from sleep. "I don't know how I can repay you for this." "You don't need to repay me," he said, sitting down across from her. "I just did what anyone would do." They ate together in comfortable silence, and as the day went on, they fell into a routine. He showed her around the cabin, and she helped him with chores, cleaning up and organizing things. She was a quick learner, and he was impressed by how hard she worked. As they spent more time together, a sense of camaraderie began to form between them. But there was something more than just friendship building between them, something neither of them had expected. The way she laughed at his jokes, the way he looked at her when she wasn't looking. It was clear that their connection was growing stronger with each passing day. Neither of them knew exactly what to do about it. Breathing. They were both too afraid to speak up, afraid that it might ruin the comfortable silence they had built. But deep down, they both knew things were changing. As the days passed, the storm outside began to die down, but something else was brewing between them. It wasn't just the weather. It was their growing feelings for each other. She had been a stranger at his door, and now she was a part of his life in a way that neither of them could have predicted. They had started as strangers, but somewhere along the way they had become something more. And as the sun began to set on another quiet evening, she looked at him and smiled. "You know, I think it's my turn to help now." He raised an eyebrow, unsure what she meant. "After everything you've done for me," she continued, "it's only fair that I return the favor." He chuckled, not entirely sure what she had in mind, but for the first time in days he felt a sense of excitement stir within him. He wasn't sure where this would lead, but he was willing to find out. She woke up early the next morning, the first rays of sunlight creeping through the small window of the cabin. It was still cold outside, but inside the warmth of the fire had made the cabin feel like a cozy haven. She lay there for a moment, listening to the quiet of the morning. Bro. Her mind wandered, thinking back to how she had ended up here in the first place. She had been lost and alone, but now she had found shelter, warmth, and something even more unexpected, a connection with someone she never thought she'd meet. As she stretched and got out of bed, she could hear the soft sounds of movement coming from the kitchen. She smiled, knowing that he was already up, making breakfast like he did every morning. Breath. They had fallen into a comfortable routine in the few days they had spent together, and she liked it. She liked it more than she had expected. Her feelings for him were growing, but she wasn't sure what to do about them. She had only planned to stay for a few nights until the storm passed, but now she wasn't so sure. She walked into the kitchen and found him already at the stove, flipping pancakes. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft but cheerful. He turned and smiled at her. "Good morning. I made extra, just in case you were hungry." He placed a plate of pancakes in front of her, and she sat down at the table. "You didn't have to," she replied, feeling a little guilty for not helping more around the house. But then again, he had always been so kind, and she didn't want to feel like she was taking advantage of him. "Thank you," he shrugged casually. "It's no trouble at all."
It's nice to have someone to share meals with.
They ate in companionable silence, the only sounds being the occasional clink of utensils against plates and the soft crackling of the fire in the other room.
Breath. As they finished, she noticed the way he looked at her sometimes. His gaze lingered a little longer than it should, and his smile was different, warmer than before. She could feel the shift in the air, the way things were changing between them, but neither of them spoke about it. They didn't have to. It was there, unspoken, but understood. The day went on like that, peaceful and calm. They worked together on various tasks around the cabin, chopping wood, fixing a broken window, and even just sitting by the fire and talking. They learned more about each other with each passing moment. She found out that he had grown up in this very cabin, raised by his parents who had passed away not long ago. He had stayed behind, not wanting to leave the place that had held so many memories of them. She could see how much he missed them, how the weight of their absence lingered in the way he spoke about them, the way he looked at the old photographs on the walls. It made her feel a deep sense of sympathy for him. In return, she shared pieces of her own life, though she didn't reveal everything. She had always been the kind of person to keep her guard up, especially after everything she had been through. But with him, it felt different. There was something about the way he listened, the way he didn't push her to open up more than she was ready to. He let her take her time, and that made her feel safe. As the evening approached, the storm outside seemed to pick up again, the wind howling against the windows and the snow falling heavily once more. It was the perfect night to stay inside, to relax by the fire and forget about the world outside. But even though she had told herself she would leave once the storm cleared, she found herself not wanting to go. Yeah. Later that night, they sat by the fire, each of them with a cup of tea. The conversation had slowed, and they were just enjoying the peaceful atmosphere of the cabin. She looked at him, noticing the soft glow of the firelight on his face, his expression calm but thoughtful, for she felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling that had nothing to do with the fire. "I've been thinking," she said, breaking the silence. He looked over at her, his expression curious. "About what?" "I didn't expect to be here this long," she admitted. "I thought I would just stay until the storm passed, but it feels like something more now. I don't know how to explain it."
He nodded, his gaze softening.
I understand. It's been nice having someone around.
I didn't expect that either. It's been a while since I've had someone to talk to, someone to share things with. She could feel the unspoken words between them, the growing connection that neither of them had voiced yet. It wasn't just about the storm anymore, or the shelter. It was about something deeper, something neither of them had expected to find in each other. She wanted to say more, but the words seemed stuck in her throat. Instead, she just smiled, a soft and genuine smile. Breaths. "Thank you for everything. For taking me in when you didn't have to. For being kind." He reached over and gently took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring.
I'm glad I did.
"I'm glad you're here." They sat there for a moment just holding hands, the warmth between them growing in a way that neither of them had expected.
But it felt like everything. The connection was undeniable now. And it didn't matter that they had only known each other for a short time. What mattered was that in this moment they had found something real, something that went beyond the storm outside. The night passed slowly, the fire crackling softly as they sat together in silence. For the first time in a long while, neither of them felt alone. The storm finally began to die down by the following morning. The howling winds had softened, and the thick blanket of snow outside had started to settle. It was still cold, but the world beyond the cabin was quieter now, calmer. She stood by the window, watching the snowflakes fall gently to the ground, each one unique but blending together in the vast whiteness of the landscape. It was beautiful, in a peaceful, almost serene way. Yet, as she stood there, a thought lingered at the back of her mind. She had planned to leave once the storm cleared. But now, as she looked around the cozy cabin, at the man who had offered her shelter, warmth, and kindness, the thought of leaving seemed more difficult than ever. The few days she had spent here had changed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She wasn't just grateful for his generosity, something deeper had formed between them. The connection they had built over the course of the storm felt real, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't want to run away from something that felt right. As the sun slowly rose higher in the sky, casting its golden light through the small windows of the cabin, she turned away from the window and walked into the living room, where he was sitting, looking out at the snow-covered trees outside. He looked up when she entered, his expression soft, as if he had been waiting for her to say something. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Brett. The silence between them was comfortable. But there were so many things left unsaid.
I was thinking, she began, her voice tentative.
The storm is over now. I should probably head out, start figuring out what to do next. Her words felt hollow as she spoke them, as if she wasn't fully convinced of them herself. Brett. She had told herself that she would leave once the storm passed, but now, after everything they had shared, the idea of walking away seemed almost impossible. He looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing his words carefully.
I thought you might say that, he said quietly. But I also thought you might stay. Just a little longer?
Ration. She hesitated, unsure of what to say. She had no real reason to stay, other than the fact that she didn't want to leave. The world outside the cabin was still a place she wasn't ready to face, and in here with him, everything felt easier. I didn't expect to be here this long, she admitted, her voice softer now. But I feel like I don't want to leave. He smiled, his expression warm but gentle. You don't have to leave. Not right now, anyway. You're welcome to stay as long as you need. His words weren't a command or an invitation to stay out of obligation. They were simply a genuine offer. It was clear that he didn't want her to leave either, but he wasn't trying to force her into anything. He just wanted her to know that she had a place here, if she wanted it. The weight of his words settled in her chest, and for a moment she could hardly believe it. She had been so used to moving on, to never staying in one place too long, that the idea of staying somewhere with someone felt strange. But now, as she stood there in the warmth of the cabin with the fire crackling softly behind them, it felt right. For the first time in ages, she didn't feel like running. For the first time, she didn't want to be alone. I guess I could stay a little longer, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was a simple statement, but it carried so much more weight than the words alone. It was a decision, a shift in her life that she hadn't expected to make, but now that she had, it felt like the right one. Bray, just until I figure out what comes next. He nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. That sounds good. There's no rush. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, and for the first time since they had met, everything felt easy. It wasn't the kind of easy that came from avoiding challenges, but the kind of easy that came from knowing you were in the right place, with the right person. It was the kind of easy that made you feel like you could finally breathe after holding your breath for too long. The days that followed were filled with quiet comfort. They worked together, of course. There were always things to do around the cabin. But it wasn't just about the work anymore. It was about the shared moments, the simple pleasures of being with someone who understood. They talked more, laughed more, and in the evenings when the fire burned low and the outside world seemed far away, they sat together in the quiet, enjoying each other's company without needing to say much at all. She had never expected to find peace here. She had come in out of the storm unsure of where her life was going, unsure of herself. But now she found herself thinking about her future in a way she hadn't before. She wasn't sure what it would look like, but she knew that she wanted to face it with him. The connection between them had grown stronger. And though neither of them had put a label on it, it was clear that they cared for each other in ways that neither of them had anticipated. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was something real. Something that mattered. One evening, as they sat by the fire, he looked over at her, his expression soft. You know, I'm glad you decided to stay. I didn't want you to feel like you had to go just because the storm passed. She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. I'm glad I stayed too, she said. I didn't know what I was looking for when I came here, but now I think I've found it. He smiled back, and in that simple exchange, something shifted again, as if a new chapter had begun for both of them. But the storm had passed, but the real journey was just starting. They didn't know what the future held, but for now, they were content to face it together.